Hi there and welcome back to the Enchanted Tree, how it all began. Today I have a new helper. I would like you to meet Ollie, and of course you know Aiden, and my name is Claire. Here goes, Chapter 3. Emily ran back to the hole, slightly out of breath. "Oh, I've got it, Tommy!" she yelled, but there was no answer. Thomas and Henry had disappeared completely. "Oh gosh," Emily whispered to herself. "Here goes." Turning on the flashlight, she slowly started down the stone steps. The roots of plants reached out from the dirt walls around her. The occasional worm wiggled out of sight. The air was musty, and Emily shivered as a cool breeze brushed past her. But this only added to her excitement. The steps behind her disappeared one by one as her light left them behind. The gloom below her crept to the edge of the flashlight's beam as she carefully descended, her hand trailing on the damp wall. How on earth did Thomas get here without a flashlight? As she neared the bottom of the stairs, she heard, or thought she heard, voices. She stopped and waited. It was Thomas. Thomas and another boy, deep in animated conversation. How incredibly odd. As Emily turned the corner, an extraordinary sight met her eyes. She stood on the last step with her mouth wide open and her eyes as big as saucers. She had no need of the flashlight, for the cavern she now found herself in was well lit with candles and lamps. The most astonishing part was that this room was full of doors. All sorts of doors. Some big, some small, some long, some short, and each one in this vast collection was a different colour. Some doors were mounted on the walls, and some just seemed to hover in space. Emily wondered, where on earth do all these doors lead? Emily's thoughts were interrupted by Thomas shouting,
"Wow! Isn't this cool?"
Emily looked around, but all she could see was Thomas and Henry. How did you get down here in the dark, Thomas?" Though it was apparent from the twigs and dirt on his face and clothes that he had rolled down. She continued to inquire, And who are you talking to?"
Me! That would be me!"
said Henry, jumping around in a circle. Emily nearly collapsed in surprise as she watched the dog chasing his own tail and laughing all the while.
"This place is magic, Emily! Henry can talk down here!"
explained Thomas, his eyes sparkling more than usual.
"Hey, I've always been able to talk. You just couldn't understand me."
Henry interjected.
"Oh, and by the way, could you bring me some more doggy biscuits? And could we flush later? And would you scratch my head again, Emily?"
Henry barked in such a hurry that he nearly tripped over his own words. Just then, without warning, a small golden speck flew straight past them and hit itself against one of the doors.
"Cool, glowworm!"
cried Thomas as he pounced at the light and caught it in his hands. A little high voice answered him back.
"Excuse me, but I am not a bug."
This caused Thomas to jump back in alarm and toss this little creature into the corner. The glowworm started to cry. The tiny, delicate sobs were so sad to hear. Emily rushed over and picked it up. Actually, it wasn't a glowworm at all. It was the most beautiful creature that Emily had ever seen, and it fit perfectly into the palm of her hand. Now, don't cry. Thomas didn't mean to hurt you. He thought you were a fly," soothed Emily.
"I am no such thing. I am a fairy. My name is Rose. Rosebud.
Oh, she really was a lovely thing. She wore a silky green dress, a foxglove for a hat, and her delicate silver wings quivered behind her long blonde hair. Her voice was shrill like a piccolo.
Oh, hello, Henry.
She added. Henry nodded at Rose and politely wagged his tail.
You know Henry?
Asked Thomas in amazement. Chapter 4.
Of course I know Henry. I have been to your house many times. Emily has lost a lot of teeth, you know.
Oh, gosh, said Emily. So that's you. You're the tooth fairy. You take my teeth from under the pillow and leave me some money. The fairy beamed and fluttered around the cavern.
She tells me all her stories about her adventures.
Henry bragged.
Hey, Rosie, did you ever find that giant's tooth you lost?
Yes, thanks, Henry.
Blushed Miss Bird, not wanting anyone to know that she had once misplaced the Queen's prized possession. I've always wanted to know, Rosie, what do you do with all the teeth that you collect? Asked Emily. Where do you put them?
Well, first I bring them back here for the elves to sort out. Here, look.
Rose flew to the wall and took out an old tin box that was tucked away under a pink door.
Hey, that's my dad's box for his nuts and bolts.
Cried Thomas.
He keeps it in his garden shed.
Yes, dear, but I didn't think your dad would want this old thing anymore. So I took it and left him a penny for it.
Rose gave a charming smile and fluttered her wings blamelessly as she handed over the tooth tin to Emily. Inside were rows and rows of teeny tiny teeth from all the children in the neighborhood.
We have just finished making the Queen a new necklace for her birthday. These are leftovers and will be ground up into fairy dust.
She paused before asking,
I believe one of your front teeth is pretty wobbly, Thomas.
Thomas squinted at Rosebud, then backed away with his hand over his mouth in fear she would take his tooth there and then. The fairy began to laugh, splashing fairy dust everywhere.
Bah! Missing teeth, fairy dust. I don't believe any of it.
And with a brush of his hand, Thomas shooed her away.
Really, dear?
Whispered Rose as she flew softly towards him. She reached into the pocket around her waist and threw some glittering gold dust directly at Thomas.
You shouldn't have done that, Thomas.
Warned Henry, but it was too late. He croaked. Emily gasped. You've turned Thomas into a frog, she said, stating the obvious. A big, fat, green frog with orange spots on its back began hopping all around the floor. Rosie saw the concern on Emily's face and winked at her with a mischievous grin.
Don't worry, it's not forever.
Then, with another splattering of fairy dust, Thomas changed back into Thomas.
Wow, that was so cool.
He laughed.
Can you do it again? I want to be a pterodactyl this time.
Oh, goodness me, no time for that. I'd quite forgotten what I came down here for. Oh my, the Queen will be furious.
As soon as she said that, the huge purple wooden door to the left of the cavern burst open, and two identical dwarves carrying flags tumbled in, followed by a jumbled procession of elves, pixies, and brownies. They all pushed and shoved and tripped over one another as they desperately tried to blow out a fanfare on their trumpets. Just as the head brownie started to announce the arrival of Her Royal Fairiness Queen Mab, in stormed the lady herself, and in a deep, trembling voice roared, "Rosebud! Oh, where is that fairy?"
Thanks for joining us for chapters 3 and 4. Come back in the next videos for 5 and 6.